Hi, for the ASEAN cast, we're here at Futuretech and I'm joined by Shawn Wildermuth. Shawn, you're the man, the legend, but just for the people who don't know you yet, could you please introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Shawn Wildermuth. I recently moved to the Netherlands. I've been teaching and programming for 40 years this year. I know you can say legend now because it doesn't make me feel any older than I really am. My small company, Wildermuth, here in the country, we do coaching, consulting, and teaching. So face-to-face training, recorded trainings is probably the biggest thing we do. But we also will do coaching with individual companies, get them unstuck, or to help them architect new systems, those sorts of things.
It's so good that you're now in the Netherlands. That's amazing. When I first read that, I couldn't believe it. But how did that come to be?
After COVID, me and my wife, we got very sedentary, and we decided we didn't want to live having to drive everywhere. We wanted to be more of an active lifestyle, and it's pretty difficult to find a place that isn't New York to have that sort of lifestyle. And because I lived here in my 20s for a couple of years, I've always had a soft spot for the Netherlands. And so when we started looking into it, there was a great opportunity here there's an American visa that you can get here if you start your own business, and just took off from there.
Yeah, we were very happy with it. So thank you for considering us. Yeah,
so far,
I'm
very happy being here. Yeah.
And it seems to me that career-wise, you really deliberately chose the teaching path because you're sharing knowledge all over the place. You gave a keynote here at Futuretech, but you also, as you said, are doing a lot of trainings.
Yeah, I've been programming so long, and I really have sort of developed into this place where I'm much more interested in the business problem than the technical problem. The technical problem is sort of the side effect of understanding the business problem, or the domain, if you want to use that word. And so what's happened with the teaching was I sort of got this opportunity to work with some of my heroes at the time. This was back about probably 30 years now, and teach. And I didn't realize it at the time how much I would love the problem of teaching. Like when you teach something, it's not about, we've all gotten those books where it's just example, example, example with no through line. And figuring out that became very interesting to me because I like watching people get it. Like there's that moment where their eyes get wide and like, oh, that's why that is what it is. And so it's just been very natural for me to think in those terms. I didn't realize when I was mentoring that I was trying to figure that out earlier in my career. So when it happened, I was as surprised as anyone because I never thought, I would be a teacher. When I started, I thought I would be the canonical. I would be in a dark room and they would slide pizza under the door. Like that's what I thought programming was. And of course, I shouldn't say of course. If that's what you think programming is, it's not. It's way more a people business than people give it credit for.
It is. Yeah. Again, it's the people behind tech that really make it shine. So, but you're also really tech deep invested. You know everything there's to know, right? About the .NET, you were part of the .NET Foundation, if I'm not mistaken.
I was. Yeah. I wanted to dissuade this idea that I know everything because I really don't. I focused on some certain things that I feel like I know pretty well, but I haven't done much in AI. There's certainly little pockets that I could know more about, but the opportunity to work with the .NET Foundation was really interesting because I joined so that, or was elected. I said joined, but was elected, and my hopes was to do more outreach to underserved communities. And what I found fascinating about that, I don't think I accomplished much, to be perfectly honest with you, but I learned a lot, and hopefully we've created some relationships that they've continued with the other people on the board, was that I had these very false notions about what South America, Sub-Saharan Africa, like what those groups really needed. And I really learned that they don't need us to send them boxes of books. They would rather have someone in their community do a YouTube with or do podcasts with, so they can start to explain that there are some really incredible programmers there, but they don't get any visibility because everyone thinks These countries don't have any infrastructure. Especially Americans don't have a great concept of how advanced Africa is. And so I was proud of the work we did there. Though of course I'm pretty self-critical. So I was like, I'm sure we didn't do enough. But it's work I was proud of. I've been using C# since the beta of 1.0. So what kind of happened there was I was able to get in the beta because Chris Sells, I don't know if you know who that is, but he's been in tech forever. I asked him if he'd help me figure out how to write a book. His writing's always been pretty comfortable for me. But then I got the beta of .NET, and I was like, oh shit, this is, sorry.
Oh, that's shucks. Totally okay.
Oh shit.
You can.
This is a moving target. I'm trying to write a book, 400-page book on something that's changing constantly. That's when sort of the teaching bug sort of took me. But it's always been important to me that I have this teaching and I have this real world work. I'm trying to do both, because otherwise your teaching isn't really teaching the real world and you're just doing example projects.
Yeah, but it also involves keeping up with a lot of, and as you told, there are categories like AI, maybe you're then somewhat lacking behind, and you've had the feeling that people have moved further along. But for the .NET space, you've done a lot, because I remember seeing sessions of you for minimal APIs, and it was all over the place, and also deep .NET stuff. But
I hope. I really love .NET as a language and a platform. I was a little concerned as we ended the .NET framework time and Core was coming in, whether they were going to sort of really fix it. And I've been astonished at that team and what they were able to do. It became fun to write APIs again. It became fun to write services. I really haven't done a lot with the front end. Like I had a YouTube video recently about Blazor that I don't know whether I was clear or not, that I was like, I can see who this is for, but probably not for me. And that sort of blew up. So .NET is actually so expansive. You can kind of, there are people who know Maui really well but don't know how to write APIs. There's people that use it for game development but have never written a business app. Like, that's one of the benefits of C# for me, is it's kind of ubiquitous. It's so many different areas you can use those same skills. It reminds me of JavaScript in that way. JavaScript, do you want to run on a server? Do you want to run on a client? Do you want to write tools with it? It's sort of the same kind of thing.
But then much more strongly typed and better for probably.
I don't think strongly typed is as important as I think a lot of us are led to believe, but it is important. I usually use TypeScript on the client side, so I get that type checking at compile time but not at runtime, which is kind of what I want. Like, in order to do things really dynamically in C#, it's kind of difficult because the type system keeps you in sort of a box. But you can work around all of them. Like, TypeScript and JavaScript aren't perfect by any stretch of imagination, just like C# isn't. But staying up with like the new dialect of C# that we have now, you kind of talk to different developers and they write their code very different depending on what era they came in and whether they got stuck with certain, pre-C# 9. C# looks very different in a lot of ways than post, with expressions coming in and lambdas, just a ton of features that change the way we were able to write code. Doesn't mean you had to, but sometimes it's more descriptive, self-descriptive than some of the other things we have to do. So I really love the way that's, to answer your question that you really asked, I love this stuff, and that's why I keep up. I'm not trying to keep up so that I can do this. It's just sort of a side effect of, I'm really lucky that I've been able to make a career out of something I love. And I know not every dev feels that way. And a lot of people that aren't in tech certainly don't feel that way. So I really feel in many ways I'm incredibly lucky. I I've fallen into the right holes more often than I haven't.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Yeah. And you mentioned TypeScript just yet.
Yeah.
And where C# is evolving, where is this going for the new TypeScript backend?
Well, not C#. Anders just did a short talk where he talked about them porting, not rewriting, but porting their compiler to Go instead of C#. Now, they didn't pick C# because they did not pick C# for a reason. And I know a lot of C# developers that have heard about this are freaked out. If Anders won't use C#, he invented the language, then is it in trouble? And I don't believe it is. It's more of a matter of Go felt like the right language because they were really porting it. He actually shows the TypeScript compiler code with the Go, and it really is the same code. Like they've had to change some of the syntax, but and so for porting TypeScript to C#, it would require, I think, a lot more.
Yeah.
And they were able to almost immediately get like a 10 times speed increase for TypeScript without rebuilding it from scratch, which was never their goal. So I think a lot of people in the .NET space hold on to C# as the one true language, and I think that can be at your detriment. Like if you're doing certain kinds of work, C# is great. You can use it in all these different ecosystems. But sometimes, for like web scraping or for like machine learning, Python is probably a better language for it. It has more of what you need, and it's dynamic enough that you can do some things that would be harder in C#. You need pure speed, and you're writing system or drivers work, something like Rust or C++ is going to be way better than C#. It's not about there being one language. I was just talking to some folks, and it's like, all non-functional languages have about 7 constructs, and they're all the same, right? They have ifs and fors, assignments, like they have way more in common than they have different. I'll admit I don't like to write Python because I don't like space significance, right? But that has nothing to do with the tech, right? It has to do with my arrogant little brain is like, how do I know when it's over if there's not a curly brace? Like it just feels weird. So I think finding a language that you love, and if that language happens to be C#, that's amazing. But don't be afraid to use different languages. Like polyglot isn't something that is for you to be able to say on a resume you're doing it, or that you're smarter than other developers, because I think sometimes it comes across that way. I think it really can broaden your sense of it. Like functional programming is something I haven't really dove deep into, and it's sort of like the next thing I'm going to try to understand better. I'm sure that will teach me ways that I would use C# differently. Like I don't know that I'll build whole systems with F#, but it certainly probably will dictate, this would be easier if I, because a lot of those concepts have come to C#, like the idea of records, like the idea of lambdas, things being stateful, but you can't change them. I suddenly can't think of the word for that. All that's made C++ C# code better.
Yeah. But it kind of maybe also underlines that we as software developers have to evolve as well.
We do.
Sometimes new languages come on our path, and they may be better than what we're using up till now, right?
Yeah. Well, like nullable reference types is one of my favorite examples of this, because nullable reference types was a great idea, and it did force developers to start to think differently about how they write their code. But that code, for the most part, is safer than the code we used to write. It just starts to make sense that unfortunately, nullable reference types is the wrong name, because it's you're allowed to have non-null objects for once. It used to be that everything had to be everything that's an object could be null. And that's been a change that some developers have had a hard time getting their head around. But once you get your head around it, you'll understand that I don't have to deal with null if this can't be null. Like, it changes all these checks we used to have to do. And that, I think, comes directly from other languages. Like, that wasn't just an invention by C#. They looked across the ecosystem at different
That's how it works, right?
Yeah,
Everyone borrows features from other languages.
And that's good. You know, in the Microsoft space, everyone borrows from other languages, but usually they're other languages that Andrew wrote. Right? So Andrew writes this, and then he moves on and goes, I'm going to take all these ideas and put them in this, and then so he keeps on going down that road.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I think we can talk for hours about this, I think we just wrap it up here. So thank you so much.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity. I love to hear the sound of my own voice. So.
And we love hearing the sound of your voice.
Great.
So thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of Futuretech.
Thanks, SCN.